Hello and welcome back. Yes, it's that time of the year again where a new version of Darktable is available. This time it's version 5.4 with loads and loads of new stuff. And unless you've been hiding under a very, very dark table, you know that one of these modules is the new tone mapper AGX. Yes, at last. But there's loads of other stuff to look at. There are lots of updates, upgrades and news in the new version. I'm Nicholas, and let's look at all this together. Well, let's kick this off by the most important news for Darktable in this new 5.4 version, and that is the new tone compressor, which is called AGX. Now, I will come back into this module in detail in the next video. I think I'll have to do that one quite quickly because I understand there's quite a lot of demand for it, but it is a tone compressor that will now, in my opinion anyway, replace Sigmoid and Filmic, even if some people argue that Sigmoid can pretty much do the same thing. I actually believe that we have the controls of Filmic, we have the output of Sigmoid, we have a lot more control over everything we do. I find it clearer, I find it easy to use, even if it does seem more complicated, because look at all those different settings, and we have two pages. We have color and we have the dynamic range settings. So that's quite a lot. Now, just to set you off, if you've never used this before, we're going to set the black and white points of the photos, and we have two here little icons to click. Either we use the selected area to set the black and white, which is this, and you can change your area and that will change the black and white points in the image, or you have a little camera which will read exposure from the camera, from the metadata in the camera, which will give you kind of something a bit more uniform. Anyway, set black and white. Then we have, you can move the relative exposure of the pivot, which is the internal midpoint for this module. So you can move that around if you like. I will go into that, but your image will get darker and lighter. One being on the input side, which is the actual pixel you're reading, and the other is the output side, which will boost the brightness on the screen. Contrast is the one you need to move to get if you want some nice contrast. And what I love about AGX is, you see, when we're in backlit situations, we get lovely smooth transition from the very bright points to the darker ones. That is beautiful. We have shoulder power, which will control the amount of contrast in the highlights. There we are. So you can actually see quite easily what that's doing. The toe power, which is the contrast in the darks, so we can make this silhouette to really stand out. And you should be fine with that. Next on AGX is, we'll pass this, the advanced tone parameters, close that down. We have slope, lift, brightness and saturation, which these are done after the tone compressor. So here we are actually changing the information on the screen. We're not in the scene referred process anymore. We're in the display referred. So slope will basically help you fix a new white point. So once you have something you like, you can actually start clipping some whites while retaining. I can show you this with the clipping. So before, you see, we had no clipping at all, and if I move that up, we start clipping the whites. So that could be a creative thing you want to do. The lift will essentially choose the black point. Well, it will modify it so we can start clipping the darks. So if you want really kind of, you want to be sure you get lots of blacks, we can move that down a little bit. And I'll remove this clipping indicator, which is the O keyboard press if you want to. And the brightness, well, the brightness will kind of adjust the midtones. This is in a broad stroke. So we have something like this for my image. So that is for the AGX tone compressor on the brightness, the actual compressing. Now, the second part of the AGX module concerns colors. So what is the primary? Is to have the primary colors, red, green, and blue. Now, if AGX was doing nothing, we can disable the adjustments, and this photo of a laser would be like this. So automatically, already we have some basic transformations, which enables us to mitigate the problems with these very bright, very powerful colors like lasers, concert photos, you'd find that, sunsets, anything that's very bright lights. If you've got a mid-contrast photo, you won't see much difference whether you actually come into this primaries tab or not. We have several presets here. So Blender Like is the one I'm on. Smooth will give you another kind of look, and the unmodified is kind of or very similar from what I gathered to disable, except for if I disable, I lose the sliders, and if I don't, then I can all adjust everything manually. So I'll go into smooth because I thought that was quite nice. The idea being that you can attenuate the colors before the tone compressing. So if I'm attenuating the colors here, I'm pushing this up, which means the blues are getting desaturated, which pushes everything more to what the screen can actually show. Because the problem with very bright saturated colors is that our screens cannot show them. So once they've reached their limit, then all the blues are the same, pure blue, and you get blocks of blue like that. So I'm actually going to attenuate the blues quite a lot. If you also have problems with color toning, I can actually rotate them, and this can help get the colors to a safe space before doing the actual settings here. So I'm actually going to, well, it's automatic, not I'm going to. What happens is you play with the colors before the compressing, then all this compression is done. And then after that, we have aftertone mapping, and you can reverse you can reverse the purity, and we can have, sorry, the master purity boost needs to be set first. I'm going to set this to 0. So if I set the reverse purity boost, then I can actually reverse the blues and try and get some kind of blue back. I will never get anything that the screen cannot show. What I am getting is maybe some detail, some gradations in the colors that I didn't have before. And that is the whole point of this module. So we are playing around with this. I'll come back into this a little bit later. You see, if I go too far, my blocks are back. So maybe like this here. You also have an automatic button, which will reverse the sliders automatically, which obviously here doesn't work. I'll come back into this later, but that gives you an idea of how this works. I can actually reset these whites maybe. No, there's not much happening there. Anyway, that is for the AGX module. That is the best, the most brilliant thing in this 5.4 update. Now, the next update that was made is to the tone equalizer module. Now, I already announced this quite a while ago, actually, in the previous update, and it actually didn't make it to the master version, and here it has. It's a minor update, but very useful, is that we have here the mask exposure compensation, the mask contrast compensation, which are two buttons here, two clicks that you'll need to make in 99% of the cases when you use this module. They are now on the advanced tab, so I don't have to go into the masking tab to get the histogram in the right place, because essentially that's what it does. It just gets the histogram in the right place, and then I can start adjusting brightness and darks and kind of adding or removing contrast to the image. So that is very useful. It's just a time saver. So that's essentially it. That's the update to the tone equalizer. The next update is something that has been made to the general user interface. So it's not per se an update to a particular module. It's an update we'll find in several modules, the ones where you can adjust the hue of colors. So let's say I go to the color calibration here, and I want to change the temperature. So this would be just in Kelvin, and I can adjust the temperature like that. But if I go to custom, then now I get a hue slider, which I can adjust, and the chroma, so the amount that is applied. And the change is here. If I right click, then instead of getting that slider, I actually get a visual help. And with the wheel, I can move around and choose my particular hue to my taste. And this is actually a very good update because the first of all, it's visual, and second, the adjustments are sufficiently precise and small to make the actual this hue slider much more usable than it was before. You'll find this in every single module where there is a hue. So if I go, for example, to the color balance RGB, which I hadn't put on, we'll do basic standard colors. And if I go to the 4 ways and I want to add, let's say, a blue tone to the shadows, I would go to the hue, see hue here, and we get the wheel again. And then I can pick this up and add some blue to the shadows. Maybe add some cyan, maybe, whatever you want. And here to the highlights. Well, first of all, I'll add a bit of chroma, or else we won't see what we're doing. Right click, and here, if I pick up this wheel here, I can move it around and get some warmer tones, maybe into the highlights. And that is the update. That, as I said, every single module that has that hue slider will now be a wheel, and that's great. It's fabulous. The next update, which is huge also, but also invisible, is something to do with sharpening. It is actually capture sharpening. So it's a stage of sharpening which is done during the demosaicing. Now, I'm not sure of the technique, whether it's done just before or just after, but it is now hidden in the demosaic module. And this actually essentially means that the sharpening is done at the best possible time in the pipeline, which means that we'll have less sharpening to do afterwards. And that means sharpening does also sometimes add artifacts and degrades image quality in some way. It's always a trade-off, isn't it, when you when you modify an image. This is the best possible time to do it, and it's just a one-click thing. In the demosaic module, if you click on capture sharpening, then your image is sharper. Now I know you can't see that, so we're going to zoom in actually quite a lot. Now these lines are actually quite sharp, so we should see. I'm here zoomed in at 200%. So capture sharpening is off. Click on it, and capture sharpening is on. Can't see anything. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Capture sharpening, there we are. We can see it there. Well, at least I can see it on my screen. I hope you can see it on the video. But there is quite a difference there. Now, there are a number of iterations. You can calculate the radius. Here it will actually tell me that I zoomed in too much, so it can't calculate very well. So there it's calculated the sharpening. I would zoom right out. The contrast sensitivity we can modify here, which will tell me what is being sharpened. So I can actually choose to move that up, and that will avoid introducing maybe noise, some artifacts to zones I don't want to sharpen. So that's useful. And the corner boost will give some boost to the corner sharpness, which is not something I'm particularly interested in. Sorry, I moved that. There I see. So it's actually adding sharpening to the corners there, and add some sharpness to the center, which is something I don't use either. It only actually will appear if corner boost is on. And here I can sharpen the center a little bit more. I actually haven't used corner boost and the sharpen center yet, to be honest, because usually the edges of my photos, as I do a lot of street and portraits, I'm not too bothered. I'm sure landscape photographers, you'll be able to explore that, experiment with it, and set that up to your liking. It is actually, once it's on, you've got it there. I would advise to put it in a style and have it on all the time you would apply kind of a basic style to all your images, and that will just switch on for all the images on a basic level. What do I have? 8, and it's set to the really to your camera, and once that's on, it's on, and that is a great improvement to the darktable. Now, another small update has been made to raster masks. So if you follow my channel, you know that I make most of my masks in the exposure module, which is the one that comes the lowest in the pipeline. So let's say I have a new raster mask, and I'm going to do kind of a rough mask just of this heart shape here. So I will kind of basically just make a shape around it. No, this is going to be very rough and ready because I don't want to spend too much time just showing how to make masks. I will take a hue and I'll kind of pick these hues here in the reds and cross my fingers and hope I have something good. Not really. Well, if I don't, press on M to get rid of masks and press here on C. So everything is the same hue. We have very good. That was the best one. It's reset hue, and it was actually here, this slider. If I want to make a good mask, I'm much better off using that. There we are. So now I have a mask of that outside heart. Remove that just to be careful. Just the feathering there. And a mask. That is a pretty good mask. Okay, so now I want to use that as a raster mask. Let's say I want to make a new color balance RGB module here, and I'll change the name. So just click on that heart. There we are. And I'll load the raster mask. So here on the right hand side for the masking, raster mask, and no mask used, exposure heart. So basically, if I click on M, I have this now selected as a raster mask. And now what we have, I'll keep that. The update is that I now have some refinements for the raster masks. So if for this particular example, I want to only use the very fine details, or I want to feather a little bit, I can actually adjust the masks kind of to a certain degree with differentiation depending on the module where I'll use this raster mask. If I use it again for another module, I can have the basic mask and refine it differently to my taste for that particular module. So let's say I want to give some extra boost to the highlights there, and I don't know what I could do. Let's boost the saturation. There we are. That's just to show you that raster masks have received an update. Another update that was made, which seems a little bit minor to me, or else I don't understand the complete potential of this, was made to the crop module. Now in the crop module, if you start cropping, you get this rectangle. And if you move the rectangle, then in the center of the screen, you will get the actual number of pixels in width and height of your image. Now, the update says that this now respects the true pixels in the actual export, which means that if I export this image now, it will have 10,321 pixels by 7,741, and I will check that and show you in a minute. Now, this apparently wasn't the information given before. This is the true export. Before, apparently, the number of pixels was taken from the raw image. So there were a couple of pixels difference. Now, I tried here to change some things on the export and set a maximum size and see if it would show. Now, if a maximum width of 3000, if it would show the 3000, or at the point from when I go under 3000. but it didn't. I'm not sure it's useful to do that anyway. So maybe I understood something wrong, but at least apparently we're getting better precision from this crop module. So anyway, that's the update to the crop module. And just to show you on the export, if I click here, I have 10291 by 7718. I exported this without changing the size in the export. And here is the JPEG. And I have the dimensions of the image 10291 by 7718. So that crop module is working fine. I just didn't realize it wasn't working fine before. Now, a new major upgrade to this 5.4 version is the addition of multiple workspaces, which can be useful in certain cases for a number of you. In the settings, you go down to storage and we have a new option, allow for multiple workspaces. This is in the database management, and I'll switch that on. Nothing happens until I close Darktable and then I start Darktable up again. And now I have a new window which enables me to select a workspace. The one that I've been using up to now is the default one. So I could load that and I get back exactly to where I was before. That is my default workspace. I'll quit that. I can also, for testing purposes, click on memory. And now everything I do is just in the memory. So there's no database written on the hard drive. This could be very useful if you want to test developer versions, test versions of future Darktable without destroying or risking anything to your own database. Anything you do here, anything imported, any modifications will not be remembered when you switch it off and switch it on again. Edits, if they are written to the XMP of the images, will remain though, so be careful of that. Now, the interesting thing here is to create your own. I can create now a new database. So imagine, or even a new workspace. Imagine I want to, I have kind of my professional, artistic, whatever you like, workflow with those photos. And I want to also have a database where I just have family photos. So I can create a new workspace. And this workspace will be completely empty, as if Darktable had just been installed for the first time. So I could add to library, and I will go into places, and let's say I'll go to my family album and I'll just get some photos. Here we are. I can just, so now I'm adding the photos. Most of these are JPEGs, by the way. I'll just make them small because I don't particularly want any detail taken too much of these. And so this is basically a new Darktable that needs to be set up again completely from scratch. So imagine if I go to this gear icon and I do miscellaneous, and let's change some, why is it processing? Where was it? Where you put the scopes on the right hand side. I think it's miscellaneous. Position of the scopes. Let's put the scopes on the left just to show you what's happening. And here I have, in my preferences, if I open an image, the scopes are here on the left. Anything I adjust, if I want to have the, I want to use all the modules, so even the very old, the display referred modules, everything's there. It's on the left. I can work on my photos, no problem. And I can export. Now my export presets are all still there. So we haven't lost everything. It's the organization and the database, which is different. And if I quit now and I restart, then the new family workspace is here, which I can remove arrays if I want to. Go back to the default, which is here, back to where I was with the scopes on the right, everything as was, and as if I had two computers with two Darktables. So that's a very simple but brilliant idea. I love it. I'll finish now with some extra smaller upgrades. We'll go through this quite quickly. The first one is just for Mac users. We now have some menus up at the top here for the actual Darktable app. Now, to be honest, I've never used it. I don't know if I will. Anyway, it's there, and why not? Something else that has changed is in the user interface. Let's go to AGX, and you know that these sliders have kind of a limit. This limit is either a soft or a hard limit, and depending on the module, you can actually go beyond the contrast 5. Now, you may not want to because the soft limits are there for something, but if I right click and let's say I want to have a contrast of 7, then this module will allow me to do that. And now if I scroll back, you can see that the soft limit is here and we have a different color bar. So now I know if I'm going over the soft limit. And if I double click, then the soft limit comes back. Something else which is very minor, but you might enjoy playing with this, is in the preferences. If I go to miscellaneous, you can now change the shape of the marker. So if you don't like this little triangle which is on the bars, why not have a circle? Now, the only thing is that when you actually change that, it says Darktable needs to be restarted. So we need to restart Darktable. Let's quit that. Go back to my default workspace. And now I have circles. There we are. So a little update. You might enjoy that. I don't particularly like those, so I think I'll go back to the main triangle. Double click on that. So triangle. So you have a diamond, a bar, a circle, and a triangle. I actually like the diamond. Okay, so that restart with the diamonds. Now we have some keyboard shortcuts that have been integrated. You might already have programmed these, but if you haven't, if you click on E, you will get exposure. If you click on C, you will get the crop. And if you click on Alt or Option R, you'll get the rotation, and you can change this handle. There we are, and you just click once to get out. If you want to do fine rotations, then it's Alt, left and right bracket, our option on the Mac. So now left and right bracket, I have a French keyboard, so this is difficult. So I have to click on both options and shift to get this, but it does work. So fine rotations clockwise or anti-clockwise. So here I'm clicking on, for my keyboard, option shift 5 or option shift the right bracket. There we are. So 3 keyboard shortcuts for me, and we can see in the rotate and perspective module that we are actually doing something here. So option shift bracket for me, and option shift 5, which is the square brackets left and right. And if I look at my list of major and minor updates I wanted to talk about, I have come to the end. So this is another great update to Darktable. I think, as usual, we need to thank the developers and all the testers and all the people who give the ideas and implement these fabulous ideas. Thank you for all the hard work. Thank you for bringing these updates in a timely fashion every 6 months to us users. So thank you to everyone, and I will wish you a Merry Christmas, and I will see you in the new year. So bye-bye then.